I can never tell if I'm live yet on TikTok. On Instagram, even though you don't think you're live right away, you're live right away. On TikTok, I'm not entirely sure, because when it says we're notifying viewers that you're live. Oh, okay, someone just joined. Then we are live. So let's get started. I am the ever hopeful gardener, Amanda. I'm in North Carolina, Zone 7B, and today we're going to be talking about backyard compost, and specifically we're going to be talking about Bokashi composting, which honestly, I'm not sure who named it. I really wish they had not named it Bokashi composting, because you don't get a finished compost product when you are Bokashi fermenting. It's actually a fermentation process. Why would you even do Bokashi composting instead of just adding kitchen scraps from your kitchen counter directly to your compost bin? Well, if you want to be able to compost things that you might not normally compost, like meat and dairy and cooked foods and oily foods and a crap ton of citrus, using a Bokashi fermentation method allows you to then safely compost them, confidently compost them in a backyard compost pile, or hot or cold, or you could add it to a soil factory. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Or you could just dig a trench in your yard, 6 to 8 inches deep, and put it in that. Okay, so, oh, Mrs. Claus, you're here. I'm so great. One thing we were going to try on this live that Mrs. Claus did for Brian, the garden voyeur, earlier this morning is have a moderator. So let's see if I can add, a moderator, which I'm not sure how to do. Also, I don't know why I sing when I'm on lives. It's so stupid. No, Brian, I'm not meaning to invite you to be on the live. I was trying to press and hold your name to add you as a moderator. I'm still trying to do it. Brian, how did you do this earlier? Add moderator. I think I just did it. I'm giving you total creative license. I even set it so that you could block people if you wanted to, but don't block people who are being nice, okay? All right. Okay, so Brian should now have the ability to pin comments. Brian also just sent me a rose. Thank you so much. I'm learning TikTok. I watched a bunch of videos this morning about what you're supposed to do with lives to use them effectively. Still not really sure what I'm doing, but it made me set a live goal. And I think that was to get 20 roses. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so Brian, I'm going to try and keep up with the comments as best I can, but if you would pin any burning questions or really good comments, that would be super helpful. Okay, all right, so we're talking about Bokashi ferment, and as I mentioned, this is before I get started, if you find this interesting, if you like what I'm talking about, if you want to learn more, if you just want to support me with what I'm trying to do on TikTok and spreading the message about composting, double tap your screen, that'll send a like button, and then it'll let the TikTok algorithm know that this live is relatively interesting, and it'll maybe show it to other people, which would be really helpful for me, and I appreciate that. Okay, nice. Harold says nice bucket. Thanks. I actually have 3 out here that I'm going to show you guys. So we're talking about Bokashi fermenting so I can safely compost literally everything that comes out of my kitchen food-wise. We're talking meat, we're talking dairy, we're talking cooked foods, oily foods, a bunch of citrus if you're making a lot of margaritas. And what I do is I have one of these on my kitchen counter, and I put all of our kitchen scraps in this container, and we're going to go through what exactly is in there. And then every day I add it to one of my Bokashi buckets. So this is the one I'm currently adding to. What do you need to Bokashi ferment? You hold the comment and we'll give you options. Okay. You need a $5 bucket from Lowe's or Home Depot or anywhere. And then you need an airtight lid. This one is called a Gamma lid, and it's a 2-piece lid system. So you have the top part of the lid that has a gasket and it screws on, and then you have this part that attaches to the bucket that you're able to screw it to. This is important because, especially if you keep your Bokashi bucket inside your house like I do, I've got mine in my dining room. This keeps the smell out because you are putting like decomposing food into here. But if you have one of these gamma lids, there's no smell. So you need a $5 bucket, you need a gamma lid, and then you need Bokashi Bran. So this Bokashi Bran is specifically from SD Microbes, and it's called Beer Kashi because they go to an organic brewery and they get the spent beer grain and then they inoculate it with anaerobic microbes. And the microbes that are in this bran are the ones that are going to ferment the food for you so you can safely compost it in your backyard compost pile. Oh no, Brian, you find being moderator stressful? Well, you don't have to do it. I bet Mrs. Claus would be happy to do it. And also, like, I mean, it's not a big deal. Like, it's definitely not a big deal. I will keep up with the comments. Okay. All right, remember to double tap the screen if you're interested in what we're talking about. Right now, let's look at what I'm getting ready to add to my Bokashi bucket. Let's dump out this kitchen compost container and go through it, okay? All right, so last night I caramelized a bunch of shallots, and these are the greens, the leftover stuff from the shallots that I was caramelizing. I also have some croissant that started to get a little bit of mold on it. Bell pepper. Parts of potato that I was cutting up that had like bruises on them. Paper towels. Lettuce that was going bad. This actually, my husband put this in here. This actually looks okay. I would have eaten this. Eggshells. Coffee grounds. What else we got in here? More shallot ends. This is a very like non-yucky container. That's about it. What will be in here tonight, I'm cooking a chicken dish, and when I trim like the gross grisly parts of that raw chicken off, that raw chicken will go in here. If we had lunch meat go bad in the fridge, it would go in here. Anything like that we would normally dispose of, like food waste, will go in here. So let's go ahead and add it to the bucket. All right, Jilly Bean wants to know what we're doing here. Jilly Bean, we're talking about backyard composting and specifically Bokashi fermenting so that you can safely compost literally all the food in your kitchen, including bones. I have bones going through my compost pile. And then once they get composted, I put them on the grill and then I grind them in a mortar and a pestle and I make my own bone meal. It's super cool. It's like literally there's nothing, I feel like there's nothing food-wise going to waste in our household, which is super awesome. All right, so we're gonna add it. This is my gamma lid. This is what keeps the smell out. Now this is not necessary, but because you could just use a piece of cardboard or some newspaper. Thank you for the heart, Steve. This isn't like an airlock lid, and it's got like a lever on it, and it just keeps the air while you're filling the bucket. It keeps the air off of the food and the microbes because, as I mentioned before, these microbes are anaerobic. They don't like oxygen, so this is helpful to them. All right, so let's look. This is a bunch of celery stuff, celery tops, and you can see where I've sprinkled the Bokashi Bran on top. And we're just going to add all of this kitchen waste, food waste. Okay. I'm gonna need a shower after this. Okay. To the bucket. All right. So for every 2 to 3 inches of kitchen waste, of food scraps that I add to the bucket, then we're going to add a handful of the Bokashi Bran. This is the spent beer grains that have been inoculated with the microbes, the anaerobic microbes, and you can get these from 2 places. I get them from 2 places. This is from SD Microbes, or see, I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. This is what it looks like right now. And y'all, this is this bucket has been, it's almost all the way full. So it should smell pretty rank, but it doesn't. Really doesn't smell that bad. I have these little labels on, so I will put, once I finally close the bucket, I'll put the date I closed it. I'll put a 2-week mark and a 3-week mark on there so I can keep track. I also get Bokashi Bran. These are rice hulls, and these are from Seed and Trellis. You can go to seedandtrellis.com and get a gallon of Bokashi Bran. Those are the 2 places I get mine from. All right, so that's it. I add my kitchen scraps and a sprinkle of Bokashi. I'm gonna put this Airscape lid. It helps me press it down because we don't want air, right? This is not an aerobic process, no air. Pressed it down. Then I'm gonna put my Gamma lid, screw my Gamma lid back on. And it goes back in the dining room, and then the next time that my kitchen countertop container is full, I'll add it and I'll do another sprinkle of Bokashi, and I'll just keep doing that until this guy is all the way full. So then what happens? All right, let me check the comments. All right, Brian. Oh, Mrs. Claus, thank you for sharing the live. Yes, viewers, if there's anyone that you think might want to talk composting or learn more about this type of composting, please feel free to share it. And Steve, you just got the #1 gifter badge. And yeah, double tap that screen if you think this information is helpful. So let's talk about what happens after you fill the bucket all the way up. All right, so this one is totally full, and I closed it on June 11th, and then I did not open it. The 2-week mark would have been June 25th, and the 3-week mark was yesterday, July 2nd. I typically like to let it go 2 to 3 weeks to let the microbes do the fermentation. So we're gonna open it together and see what's going on. I asked my husband, let me show you. I asked my husband to lift this to see how much he thought it weighed. Oh my God. And he guessed 20 pounds. So we are a family of 4. This is 20 pounds of food waste that is not going in the landfill, which makes me super happy. All right, let's open it. Now, how do you know when it's ready and done to then be added to your compost pile or to trench it in the garden or your yard? There's a couple things you're gonna look for. The biggest thing you're gonna look for is the smell. You want it to smell like fermented food. Kimchi, sauerkraut, pickle. You want it to smell like very vinegary. It's gonna be strong, but it shouldn't smell like gross rotting food. Ready? Okay, that's strong. Something else you're looking for. Look how much it's compacted down. Like this was all the way full. Something else you're looking for is white, fluffy mold. White, fluffy mold is good. Blue, pink, black, green mold for this process is not good because that is aerobic mold, and we want anaerobic mold, which is the white stuff. So this bucket looks great. I could either add it to a soil factory, which is just like a big, like Rubbermaid giant tub, and you take all the soil from like Brian, you could take all the soil from your grow bags, put it in a giant tub, add a Bokashi bucket to it, mix it up, and then let it sit, and it will rejuvenate that soil. So that's one thing you can do at the soil factory. You can add it to a hot or cold compost pile, or say you don't have one of these, you can just find an area of your garden that you're not gonna plant in for like 6 to 8 weeks, dig a trench 6 to 8 inches deep, and then bury this, cover it up, and then it's going to just add all this beneficial nutrients to your soil. And you do want to dig it up a little bit before you plant there, just to make sure it's like fully decomposed. You don't want to plant plants directly into like this stuff, but once it's decomposed, you're good to go. Okay, let's see if I've got. Okay, Brian wants to know if I have any mosquito issues here by the compost, and the reason I do not is because I have this thing sitting next to me. This is a Thermacell rechargeable mosquito repellent thing. Let me show you how it works. So it recharges with like a USB cord, which is awesome. You don't have to deal with batteries or fuel cells. And then you just buy these, like, I don't know, these little cartridges. And honest to God, it does like a 15-foot like radius. And I have yet to be bit the entire time I'm sitting here in the trees by the compost pile. So that, oh, I forgot. Oh, we have some asparagus that went bad. I'm gonna add that in also. Okay. I got mine from Sam's Club, amazing. Oh, you got your thermocell from Sam's Club, Mrs. Claus? Yes, I really like it. And what's really interesting though, okay, so after I talked about it one time, because sometimes I can't be in my garden, the mosquitoes are so bad. And this allows me to enjoy my garden in the summer and the fall. The ones that are not rechargeable, that require a fuel cell, use a different chemical that can, I guess, affect pollinators. The rechargeable ones use something else where they have not been able to document an effect on pollinators. So that's just something to consider. You got there's a 30-foot one? Oh God. I guess I've had this for so long. I guess I need to look up, what they have now. Sounds like they've got new stuff. Okay. All right, don't forget to tap the screen if you're finding this composting interesting or beneficial. Double tap that screen, send a like, share it with someone that might want to know about this. But we're gonna open up the one I'm filling again and add this asparagus I forgot about. All right. One good rule of thumb when you're adding stuff to your Bokashi bin is you don't wanna add anything larger than the size of your palm. So if you've got something that's gone bad that's larger than the size of your palm, maybe just cut it up a little bit. If I was inside, I would probably chop up this asparagus a little bit, but it's not necessary. All right, so we added some food. Let's add a sprinkle of the Bokashi Bran. One thing I'd like to point out is that, so the initial bucket setup is super inexpensive, $5 for the bucket. I don't know how much one of these Airscape lids cost, but that's not necessary. You could use a piece of cardboard. And then a Gamma lid, you can get them at Lowe's or Home Depot. I don't know, 10 bucks, maybe less. And then you can also get them on Amazon for like $13 or $14. So there's a lot of places to get those. Okay, that guy's backed up. I did want to show you, and the reason I was telling you like how much it is for the bucket, so like say, I don't know, $18, $20 to have your bucket system. I have 1, 2, I have another one indoors, inside, so 3, and then this is an old one, 4. And I'm gonna tell you why this one has 2 buckets in just a minute and why I do not like it anymore. But I don't wanna throw it away because I can't get the Gamma lid ring off of the bucket and I don't want to waste it. All right. So I have 3. I recommend having at least 2 Bokashi buckets because you are going to fill one all the way full and then you're going to let it sit for 3 weeks. So what do you do during those 3 weeks with the rest of your kitchen scraps? So then you have a second bucket and that is the one that you can be filling while you're waiting for this one to finish fermenting to then add it to your compost pile. And I will tell y'all, I have always struggled with getting my compost pile hot enough because of my nitrogen sources being a little bit scarce. And when I add a Bokashi bucket to my wood chips in a compost pile, that sucker heats up so fast. We're talking 140 degrees in 72 hours. It's awesome. What does it smell like? Are you talking about the finished one? The finished one smells like vinegar. It smells like a fermented food. So really stinky sauerkraut, kimchi, vinegar, pickles. Oh my God, are you guys having to block people? I want to know. Tell me what's going on. Who are you blocking? Where are the trolls you usually get? I want to block someone. Brian, I only get the trolls on Instagram. And I'm over here on TikTok today because I'm super unhappy with Instagram because the aggregator account stole my content. Instagram refused to do anything. It was like, sorry, don't think it's a big deal. So, whatever. Okay. Let's talk about why I don't like this anymore. So the reason I think you should make your own Bokashi bucket is because a lot of the Bokashi buckets on the market have drainage, and I don't think you need that. They sell it as like, it has like a tap on it, so you can like get the Bokashi liquid out, and then they tell you that, or you hear them call it compost tea. It is not compost tea. Okay, mystery stinky Bokashi liquid is not compost tea. Also, they tell you that you can just pour it on your plants. And I do know some people who have had success pouring their Bokashi liquid on their plants, but I will tell you this. You don't know what's in it. You don't know what it is. Say you throw a bag of spinach that went bad, because my spinach always seems to go bad before we can eat it, into your Bokashi bucket. And then you find out the next week that that brand of spinach has been recalled for E. coli. And then you're putting E. coli on the plants in your garden, like your vegetables that you're going to eat. No thanks. So I do not use the Bokashi liquid for anything. That is my choice. That's what I choose to do. And I use buckets that have no drainage. What I do is when I start a new bucket, I put an extra generous handful of the Bokashi brand at the bottom, maybe even a couple paper towels, and then the Bokashi brand. If I have bread that's gone bad, I'm going to put a big sprinkle of Bokashi brand, and then the first layer is going to be bread, and that soaks up the liquid. And it's just not a big deal. If you have a bucket, so this was my first one, I thought I have to have drainage, like I have to. I was wrong, but that's what I thought. So I created one that has holes on the bottom that can drain into a bucket that has no holes. Well, there were several issues with that. The biggest issue was that if I wanted to keep this in a closet in my dining room, my Gamma lid is keeping out the smell up here. But there's nothing that's keeping that stinky mystery liquid from kind of seeping up in between the two buckets and smelling bad. So this bucket always had a smell to it, and it was because that stinky mystery liquid was like in the bottom and it wasn't tightly sealed. So that's why I don't use this one anymore. I mean, I would use it in a pinch, but I would keep it outside in the garage. Okay, let's talk about where you're gonna keep your Bokashi bucket. I keep mine in the dining room, and I moved it in there, and no one in my family knew that I had like 3 containers of decomposing food in our dining room because there was no smell because of the Gamma lid. If you want to keep it outside, just remember that the microbes are kind of like us. They like, is that a tick on my phone? Oh my God, y'all, there is a tick on my phone. Oh, how do I get rid of that? Get away. Okay. If you want to keep it outside and it's the winter, the fermentation process may take longer because those microbes are not going to appreciate 30-degree weather. They like us, like 70-degree weather. Same, I would not keep it on your deck in the full sun on 100-degree days because, again, they're not going to like that. So if you do keep it outside, just keep the temperature, the general temperature in mind. I used to keep mine in my garage. It was no problem. Mrs. Burn it. Dino, burn it. Burn what? He wants to be live. Burn him. Hi, Holly. Wait, are those Duluth see-through overalls? Brian, these are not the see-through ones. I returned those. Y'all, the pink overalls from Duluth, they're see-through. Don't get them. They can only list. I like to mute them for the whole live. Who are you muting? Brian, I feel like the power has gone to your head. The tick. Oh, I should burn the tick. Well, I don't have access to fire right now. I didn't really want to get near him. All right, you guys. Thanks, Mrs. Claus. But I can't burn the tick. I wish I could. Brian, thank you for hitting the like. Y'all double tap the screen if this is information that you like or that you think is helpful. Also, does anyone have any questions? I tried to put a poll up before starting this live. Like, where would that even be? Let's see. Okay. Clearly state your question and what the default option. No, I tried to do a poll earlier. Where is that? Where's the poll that I set up before doing this? I don't hear it. Huh. Brian can do it. Brian, oh, you want to do a poll about like who Bokashi composts? Like whether or not you, so like, do you Bokashi? Yes, no, never heard of it. Ooh, that's gross. Why don't you compost straight into the garden? Why is this your preferred method? Okay, Holly, I prefer to do the Bokashi compost. Let me back up. For years, I would just take my kitchen scraps out and bury them in the compost pile. But I never felt comfortable composting meat, bones, dairy, cooked food, oily food, super hot, like large amounts of citrus. So this Bokashi fermentation method allows you to safely and confidently compost everything that comes out of your kitchen. So we are a zero food waste household. Not one iota of food out of our kitchen goes into the landfill. You can even Bokashi ferment like paper towels and parchment paper and wax paper, dog hair, dog food, cat food. Like we put some dog food in this that had that was just like the crumbs that had been in the container for a really long time. And then what's going to happen is, I'll show you guys. So this pile is starting to cool down. It's at 130 right now. It was sitting at 140 for several days. This is wood chips, garden clippings, and Bokashi buckets and used coffee grounds from Starbucks. And Jolene, hi, is here for this lesson. I'm so glad you're here. And what I'm going to do is, now that it's starting to cool down, it is going to get, let's show you a little bit more, flipped into the second bay, which is empty. Let me show you guys. So bay 2 right now is empty. And I've been just throwing any of the garden clippings in here. And all right, so you could cut some of this stuff down to help it decompose faster. However, I like to have a little bit of structure on the bottom that kind of helps with air circulation. So I'm going to leave some of the stuff the way it is for air circulation. And then what I'll do is take this pile that's cooling down. So the sides of this, I can remove the sides of this also to make it easier to flip. Then I can just start shoveling this pile into the empty bin. And as I go, I'll take this finished Bokashi bucket, and after I add a layer of the old pile, I'll add some of the Bokashi bucket, and I'll just keep doing layer of the current pile, Bokashi, layer of the current pile, Bokashi. And I'll also alternate adding in some of these green clippings from the garden, because I like to have as many different inputs in my compost pile as possible, because the more varied your ingredients in your compost pile, the more nutritious your compost will be. Oh. Let's look back through the comments. Do you add tree limbs to your compost pile? I do not. I feel like those would take too long to break down. It's hot today. User 1490588677582. Wow, way overkill. What's way overkill? The compost structure? Because yes, I agree with you. It is overkill. But my husband and I love to do DIY projects together. And I had one made out of pallets that was 3 bays. And unfortunately, it was starting to decompose because the whole point of the compost is to like decompose organic material. So the pallets started to decompose. And my husband was like, I was starting to say, hey, I need to start finding more pallets to build another one. And husband was like, hey, why don't you let me design a really fun compost structure that looks cool, that keeps the dogs out. I do need to keep my dogs out. They like to dig in my compost. And I said, yeah, that sounds awesome. So we had so much fun building this, and I find it like very useful. Like I love it. I love it. So if it's overkill, it's overkill, but it makes me happy. Brian, you may be up. I don't know what that means. Tap, tap, tap the screen for lovely hearts. Thank you, Mrs. Claus. Yes, tap the screen if you're interested in compost. Tap the screen if you like the idea of compost. Tap the screen, double tap the screen if you want to someday compost. And if you have not started composting and you are thinking about it, I highly, highly encourage you to do so. I think one of the best ways to get comfortable with the idea of composting is to start following accounts that talk about it regularly, talk about their struggles with it, all of that. I got into composting thanks to our moderator today, Brian the Garden Voyeur, because he used to do just a ton of compost content. And the more he talked about it, the more comfortable I got with the idea of trying to do it. I reached out to him. He was super kind. He responded to me. I felt like I had someone I could ask questions of. And that is what gave me the confidence to try it. And then now that I've done it, it seems so silly that I was ever nervous to do it. But I've heard from a lot of people. I've given several compost talks around town. I've heard from so many people that they're nervous to mess it up. And I get that. I was also that way. But I have learned that you really can't mess it up. Even if you do, like if your pile goes anaerobic or it won't get hot or whatever, it's a natural process. Like it wants to break down on its own. It will eventually, no matter what you do to it, turn into compost. I particularly love hot composting just because it gets it done faster. And I find it like the challenge of getting it into that thermophilic range is just like fun. Like I enjoy it. And now you're the master composter. Holly, I am obsessed with composting. If there ever comes out with another way to compost, I will be the first one to try it. So Brian got me into hot composting. I'm also cold composting in the yard. I'm Bokashi fermenting. I have a worm compost bin. Yeah, I want to start a soil factory too, just to try that out, because I just want to do all the things compost. It's like such a good thing for the environment to keep all of that out of the landfill. And even if stuff in your county is not going to the landfill, there's a carbon footprint with hauling it from it being hauled by like the clippings truck, whatever they call that, that comes around and picks up everybody's brush and tree limbs and leaves. And takes it to the municipal center to compost. There's a carbon footprint like involved with those trucks driving around town. Like why not keep it in my yard? Why not reduce that carbon footprint? Why not keep everything out of the landfill? Thank you for the rose, James Yost. And also I have something that's amazing for my garden. Like there's just literally no downside. What is a soil factory? So Mrs. Claus, a soil factory, this is really cool. So I think a lot of us gardeners, a lot of us gardeners have a lot of potted plants, and over time the soil in those pots kind of gets old and tired. And what you can do is, if you don't have a compost pile for your Bokashi bucket, you can get a really big Rubbermaid tub from like Walmart for like $6. And you can fill it with all that tired potting soil or soil from grow bags. And then you can mix in a Bokashi bucket. And then you're gonna let it sit, and you're just gonna let this decompose, and it will rejuvenate that soil. So that's what a soil factory is. I have not done one. just because I love it, the way it heats up my hot compost pile, but I do want to try one. So wait, Amanda, I did slide into your DMs, Brian, and it was back during the time when you were like willing to interact with people. Thank goodness for me. Yes, it's Monarch Monday, so I have my Monarch hat on. If you don't know, over on Instagram, we're thinking about starting the a TikTok page for it. But over on Instagram, a group of home gardeners across the country, we have gotten together and we are spreading the word about how, as a home gardener, you can do easy things to help the monarch population, which is in drastic decline. And it's really sad. And it's just like when one pollinator is in decline, it's just an indicator that all pollinators are at risk. So yes, it's Monarch Monday. So over on Instagram, you can follow at monarch.messengers, and every Monday we put out information in the form of a reel, or we do a live where we interview people about monarch butterflies, creating way stations, all the things. Holly says, compost is exciting, Brian. It is, except I don't know if it's exciting on TikTok. I feel like compost is very exciting on Instagram and maybe even YouTube. I don't know if it's exciting on TikTok or not. Okay, Mrs. Claus says, I'm so excited to compost, just scared and waiting to put up a fence. Okay, Mrs. Claus, what are you scared of? Like this, I need to know. I feel like the guy who said way overkill never answered what they were saying was overkill. How can you tell Amanda gets excited for compost? I do get excited for compost. It's like my favorite thing. Okay, my in-laws mow our lawn and they use feed and seed. Okay, I have the answer for you. You just don't add grass clippings. I add 0 grass clippings to my compost pile. And my backyard is not treated. But the reason I add no grass clippings to my compost pile is because it is such a great source of nitrogen. I like to leave it on my yard to feed my yard. So you don't have to add grass clippings to your compost pile. Like this compost pile is nothing but wood chips, which I got a delivery from Chip Drop. It was free. They dumped an entire dump truck in my driveway. I had to carry it, take wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow into the back. So this is made from wood chips or shredded leaves, shredded dry leaves, like winter, fall leaves, garden clippings. Okay. So I just cut these. I never rip anything out of my garden because I like to leave the root structure. So I just cut these calendula plants that were just looking really gross. And this is a source of green. And this will go into the compost pile. So I use my garden clippings. I use kitchen scraps in the form of my Bokashi. I go to Starbucks and get giant bags of used coffee grounds. If you're short on green material, you can also go to like a feed store like Tractor Supply, or we have a hardware store that has alfalfa cubes. And I can soak alfalfa cubes in a bucket of water and add that as a source of nitrogen to my pile. So you definitely don't have to use grass clippings. I have chickens as well, so I guess their bedding would be nitrogen, huh? Okay, Mrs. Claus, it's awesome you have chickens. That's great for adding to the compost. So when you clean out their coop, you're actually getting carbon and nitrogen. So the shaving, I'm assuming it's like pine shavings or cedar shavings. That is a brown, that's carbon, and then the chicken poop is a nitrogen. So you're adding like both at the same time. It's just really awesome. What about unhealthy plants? Holly. Okay, here's what I'm gonna say. I have been following a couple accounts in permaculture, and while people say don't put any diseased stuff in your compost pile, I have decided that I'm trying to work on like land race plants in my garden. I'm saving my own seeds from the strongest plants every year, and I want to help develop plants that do well in my garden that are relatively disease resistant. So I'm okay adding the disease stuff to my compost pile and then putting it in my garden and running that risk. Okay, so that is a risk. So if you want to be like super safe, like you can just burn all the diseased stuff or pest infested stuff. I choose to add it to my compost pile. Yeah, but most people would probably tell you not to. All right, Mrs. Claus says, wouldn't the heat kill it? That is a great point. The thing is, you have to remember, say you're doing a hot compost pile. You need to get to 131. If you don't get to 131 degrees Fahrenheit, you have not gotten into the weed seed and pathogen killing temperature zone. And so what you run into with the home compost system, if you are counting on it to kill all the weed seeds and to kill all the pathogens, your pile has to get over 131 degrees Fahrenheit. And think about it. Every part of your pile needs to spend time in the section of your compost pile that's at 131, which is really hard to do. You just do the best you can. Like when I'm gonna flip this pile into the empty bin, the top will become the bottom. The sides, I'll move to the middle of the new pile. The middle of this old pile, I'll try and spread on the side of the new pile because I want to rotate different sections of the compost pile into that hot zone so that there's a greater chance that all the weed seeds will get killed, that all the pathogens will die, and it just helps that compost cook and finish faster. Holly doesn't keep anything that she thinks is bacterial. Okay, you do pine/hay. So those pine, I'm guessing pine shavings and like hay, yeah. As long as it's not pine needles. You don't want to put a bunch of pine needles in your compost. I mean, you can have pine needles in your compost, but you don't want the majority of your compost pile to be pine needles because they take a really long time to break down. Sean, thank you for saying it's a nice compost setup. My husband and I really enjoyed building it, and I really love it. Okay, so Mrs. Claus, I also think you have chickens. So a lot of people are using chickens to kind of turn their compost. Think about like all the bugs and worms in a compost pile. Your chickens might have like a field day hanging out in your compost pile every now and then. Super Aiden says, I thought you need bacteria for compost. You need, if you're thermophilic composting, if you're hot composting, you are creating an environment for thermophilic microbes, bacteria, to eat, poop, reproduce. And they are the ones, like their activities are what is causing your pile to heat up. Nothing to do with the outside air temperature, nothing to do with the sun. It is the activity of those bacteria. They are consuming the nitrogen, like that is their food source, and they're getting down and getting busy and producing a lot of heat. So yes, you do need bacteria, but I think Holly was talking about like bacterial infections in her plants, and she tries to avoid putting that in the compost pile. And you need to do whatever you're comfortable with. Mine has evolved over time. Like I've changed what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. And as you get more confident in your composting, your ideas of what you want to do might change also. So you've got the thermophilic bacteria, all right? And that's why your compost pile is hot. Once your pile decides like, I'm pretty done, I don't want to heat up anymore, then you're going to have mesophilic microbes move in, and they like cooler temperatures. And they are going to consume the tough woody pieces still in your compost pile, which is called lignin. And that is like, those are the microbes that you're having as your pile is like cooling down and it's not in that thermophilic range anymore. And that's another reason why you want to let your pile sit for a while and cure once it's done heating up, is because you need all those mesophilic microbes to finish breaking down like the tough pieces that are in there. Ever do a lambic compost? You'll have to tell me what that is because now I want to try it. I don't know what it is. I just compost in place in raised beds so I don't have to mix or work it. Yeah, Awesome Homestead, that is definitely something you can do. You can also do something called chop and drop. So if you, like for me, when I was like getting rid of these calendula, I could cut them off at the base, leave the root structure and that fungal hyphae all in the soil, and then I could just cut this into pieces and let it fall on the top of my raised bed and just break down naturally. Could absolutely do that. Yep. Okay, Mrs. Claus says we're so close to 10,000 likes. So if you guys, if you would double tap the screen, I don't know if I get anything if you hit 10,000 likes. Like, is there even a reason? I don't know. But if you find this interesting and beneficial, please double tap the screen. I would really appreciate it. Okay. Holly is replying to Awesome Homestead that's mostly how she does it, but she would rather have it like mine. Mine is admittedly a little extra, but when you really enjoy something, like this is like when you really enjoy something, that's what you put your resources into. So this is where I've put a lot of my resources. Okay. Mrs. Claus, they bump you up in the out. Okay, Mrs. Claus, can we chat offline? You seem to know everything TikTok, and Brian and I are both trying very hard to just not to game the system, but to understand how it works. We're relatively new to TikTok. I mean, Brian's not new to TikTok, but we started over on Instagram, so we learned how that all worked. And now that we're on TikTok, we're trying to just understand what is a badge, what is a gift, what is a rose, what is a diamond, what is do likes matter, all the things. So thank you for sharing your information. Really appreciate it. Right, it's hot and I'm lazy. So y'all, cold composting, people call it lazy composting. I think people think, oh, that makes it sound bad. Cold composting is awesome. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 piles of just wood chips just sitting in my yard. And that's cold composting because I'm not actively managing it. I'm not adding water to it. It's just getting rained on. I'm not flipping it. I'm literally doing nothing. And so it's lazy, and it's awesome though. And it will take a lot longer than a hot compost pile. I can have this pile done, I'd say in 4 months, even if I let it cure for at least a month. So I could have it done in 3 months, cure for a month. This pile could be done in 4 months. A cold compost pile is going to probably take at least a year. And the outside of the pile will not look broken down, but if you take your pitchfork, which I just want to show you guys which one I really like. If you take your pitchfork and open up that cold compost pile, you'll have, and I've got this on my IG page, not on my TikTok, but I've done it where I've opened up a cold compost pile and it looks fantastic. Fantastic. Ooh, you can come compost at my house. I'll let you. You're welcome. If you live near me, I would probably take you up on that. But let me show you guys. This is the type of pitchfork that I really like. This I got at Lowe's, and I believe it's a Craftsman. There's nothing on here telling me. So I have it linked in my Amazon storefront. What I like about it is how many and how close together the tines are, so that it doesn't let a lot of compost slip through the tines. If you try and do it with one that's only got 4 tines, you could get so frustrated. Brian has 2 different ones. He uses them at different times. I just have one. I think it's $50. My husband got it for me for my birthday, and it was one of my favorite presents ever. So that's the pitchfork I like to use. And if you are wanting to get into hot composting, I highly recommend getting some type of compost thermometer because you need it to be long enough. I think this one's I don't know, maybe it's 18 or 22 inches, because to go into the hot part of the pile, which I at first thought I was it'll be the bottom. The bottom will be the hottest. It's not. That's where all your worms are hanging out. It's not the hottest. The hottest part I feel is in 2/3 of the way from the bottom towards the top, and right in the middle, right there. So it's closer to the top. And it lets you know, so this one is a Rayo temp. It lets you know when you're starting to get hot. So it's got a section for steady, and then you get, so from 80 to 100 it says steady. From 100 to 130 it's active, and then from 131 to 160 it's hot. So once you get into the gray, that you're in that good zone for killing all the things and for cooking really fast. So those are the 2 things I recommend if you're going to compost, is the pitchfork and the thermometer if you're going to hot compost. And you don't need any type of structure. You don't even need pallets. You can just make a pile in your yard. You find a spot, just make a pile. It needs to be, if you're going to go hot, it needs to be 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and 3 feet deep to have enough mass to get hot. But if you're just doing cold compost, I mean, make it any size you want, and then just let it sit. Okay, Super Aiden, like lambic beer is fermented by yeast in the air. Same thing, but depends on compost. Oh, there's like a drop down on compost up high. Not sure what that is exactly. Super Aiden, old days they put compost up high and it would be moved from barn rafters to down low compost. That's very interesting. Had no idea. All right, it sounds like Mrs. Claus had to take off. Holly, you've got the same thermometer. Isn't it fantastic? I got it after seeing Brian have it. Brian's got like, Brian has like a really long one, which I guess I don't need the long one. My short one works just fine. Oh, Mrs. Claus is offering to help. I really appreciate that. And Awesome Home said that this would be a good lifting fork for garlic. I guess I just, I've never needed to use anything to pull the garlic. Just kind of pull it out. Ah, Holly, we hit over 10,000 likes, which I guess is good. I still don't understand what it means. Okay. Awesome Home said, I have the room so I can afford to cold compost for over a year, and that's the real cost, the space. Yeah. But even if you don't have a lot of space, you can do the Bokashi. You can do the Bokashi compost, and then you can just, like, wherever you grow, you don't have something, you do a trench, bury your Bokashi compost, wait 4, 6, 8 weeks, check and see if it's decomposed, and then you can plant there. So you can also compost ferment. I mean, I hate that they call it compost. It's a fermentation. But once you bury it in the ground, it's a form of compost. So even if you don't have a lot of space, you can do Bokashi and still be not putting all your food waste in the landfill and improving your soil health. Okay, you like it, but it makes you mad because it never says your compost is hot enough. Okay, well, have you started Bokashi composting? Because that's what really gets my compost hot. Also, giant bags of used coffee grounds at Starbucks has helped me get my pile hot. Making sure it's the right size has helped me get my pile hot. And then also, people don't realize just how much water your compost pile needs. I mean, my pile almost always needs water. Okay, Oma has one of those spin type composters, but it's not breaking down. What am I doing wrong? Oma, you're not doing anything wrong. Unfortunately, those spin type composters are very attractive to a lot of gardeners for space, for ease of turning, for keeping critters out, which I don't think critters is an issue, but I don't live where there's bears or anything really dire. Those compost bins cannot hold enough to get hot, so they will take a year or more. Once you stop adding to it, it'll take a year or more for those tumblers to be ready. So you're not doing anything wrong. It just takes a long time. Brian says, are there compost apps for the People Watch to monitor your temps? Oh, for the Apple Watch to monitor your temps? I don't think so. Also, I tried getting like a Bluetooth Wi-Fi remote thermometer so I could be in the house and see how hot my compost was, and it didn't work. I couldn't get it to work. All right, Holly does not have the Bokashi thing. All right, well, if you don't want to do Bokashi, I recommend from a feed store picking up a big bag of alfalfa cubes, soaking them in water, adding that, adding used coffee grounds from a coffee shop. I just think a lot of times piles don't have enough nitrogen, or they're not the right size, or they don't have enough water. So you guys want to see how I check to see if the compost has enough water? Let's go do it. Oh, notification is here. Hi, notification. Thanks for joining. If you wouldn't mind notification, since you're like into scaring everybody, give a double tap with some love on the live. I'd really appreciate it. Holly, we don't have to worry about it. It's a dude named Notification. All right, let's go check on how much water is in the compost, how I decide if it has enough water. Let's see, how are we gonna turn you guys? Okay, let's tilt this down a little bit. It won't go down. Okay, so here's my compost pile. Get right in here. Okay, what you do is you take a handful. Ooh, oh, it's hot. Okay, okay. Oh, that's hot, okay. Grab something over here, less hot. All right, there's some big pieces. Okay, so I've got my handful of the compost. I am going to squeeze it as hard as I can. And I'm looking for 1 to 2 drops of water. That's perfect. If I get nothing, then I need to bring the hose over and add water to it. And if I get a bunch, then I need to flip it and probably add some more browns. And if I don't have a ready source of browns, I would probably add some cardboard. I would probably flip half of it and let it dry out a little bit, add some browns, some cardboard, and then flip the other half into it. So let's see it, okay? All right, here we go. There's some big chunks in here because this pile was started on June 6th, so it's a relatively new pile. I can feel, oh, there we go. Did you guys see? Okay, so I'm getting, there we go. Oh, it's like squeezing blood from a stone. But, so my compost is fine. It doesn't need any water right now. And it's not too wet. I don't need to like flip it or add some browns. Boop, boop. Notification is having too much fun spanning. Yeah, Notification is having a lot of fun. And, you know, I don't begrudge him for that. Hopefully he doesn't truly out. Dino said, good tea. Yeah, didn't it look like a beautiful color? All right, let me see. Oma says you're going to switch to this way. I mean, I love it. And anybody who ever wants to ask me compost questions, I am happy to help. I actually had someone that I've worked with a little bit on Instagram. We did a phone call the other day so that I could help him get started composting, which was really excited. We did like a FaceTime. Let me just show you where's something. Oh, here we go. So over here, I had just, and I've been pulling from these piles of wood chips that have just been sitting here cold composting. I've been pulling from these to make new compost piles. Every time I make a new one, I just pull from the piles of the wood chips I have around the yard. There was another one over there. I think I've got a bigger one on the other side. And I think a couple more new compost piles, and I'll need to get another wood chip drop delivery of wood chips in the driveway. Let's go see what the other one's looking like. We'll stick our hand in it too. I know that weirds Brian out that I stick my hand in the compost piles, but I love it. It doesn't gross me out at all. All right. So here we got another wood chip pile, just doing the cold compost thing. What's the ratio of greens to browns and what else? I'm so new to composting. Okay, Oma. Typically, I will do 2/3 browns to 1/3 greens. When they tell you the ratios like 30-1 and all of that, which is really hard to understand, they're talking about weight, which none of us are weighing our inputs before we add them. So what I think, like I like to use the mental image of if I add 2 of those 5-gallon Home Depot buckets of browns, for every 2 buckets of browns, I'm going to add 1 bucket of greens. And it's going to be a learning process, and it's okay. Like if it doesn't like work out right away, like I promise, like you'll figure it out. It's just everyone goes through a learning curve. Brian and I's good friend Brianna has been trying to hot compost for a really long time, and just this past week it like clicked for her, and she got it into the 130 range, and we were all so excited for her. Okay, what are greens and browns? Browns are carbon-based inputs, wood chips, shredded fall leaves, cardboard, dried, anything that's dried, like dried corn stalks, those are your browns, okay? Your greens, and remember, the color has nothing to do with it. The greens are the nitrogen sources, so those are used coffee grounds, kitchen scraps, green garden clipping refuse, grass clippings that have not been treated, alfalfa, chicken poop, manures, those are all high in nitrogen. So you need a mix of 2/3 carbon to like 1/3 nitrogen. Okay, oh my God, I got way behind. Do you use eggshells? I absolutely put eggshells in my Bokashi ferment, and when I flip the pile, I can't see any eggshells in it. Yeah, Dino says don't worry too much about ratios. I agree, people get very caught up in that. Just try. It's like a natural process. You will figure it out and you will have good compost. Okay. That's a great piece of advice, Dino. But I get that people get caught up in it because people talk so much about it, right? They talk so much about it. All right, let's go stick our hand in this cold compost pile. I kind of just hope. Why won't this go down? Why won't my stand go down? There we go. All right, I kind of just hope there's no snakes. Maybe I'll get a stick first. Let's just do it. All right, so see how the pile on the outside doesn't look broken down? But as I start digging into it, see how it's getting darker and more broken down? And look, you can see like the fungal hyphae. So with a cold compost pile, you've got that mesophilic microbes that aren't working at high temperatures, breaking down the woody pieces. So you've got a lot of like fungal stuff. Oh, it's looking really good. So I just let this sit and it's going to turn into compost. All right. Brian, I feel like I'm not caught up. How often do you flip? I don't flip on any set schedule. I flip when the pile cools down and I'm trying to get it to heat back up. And then once my pile doesn't heat back up, I just let it sit. I don't flip it anymore. So the white stuff is good. Yes, it is. White stuff is good. Mushrooms, fungi, they're very, very good. You don't need to worry about those. Okay. Holly, I think she will repost it after. I missed most of the Bokashi. Brian, I can't post the live on TikTok after, right? Like I'll have to put it on, I could put it on YouTube, right? Okay. I will do a quick Bokashi recap for Holly. So Holly, a Bokashi is a fermentation process. It requires a 5-gallon bucket, a $10 to $13 gamma lid because it screws on, it keeps the smell out. In the bucket, you put all your kitchen scraps, including meat, bones, dairy, cooked food, oily food, tons of citrus. And then for every 2 to 3 inch layer of food, you have to purchase this, aerobic microbe inoculated Bran, and you sprinkle a little bit on top of every 2 to 3 inch layer of food. I keep this in my dining room. I fill it periodically from the kitchen countertop scrap container I have. You could just put a piece of cardboard down. You don't want air. This is anaerobic. Once it's filled all the way to the top, I won't open it again for 2 to 3 weeks. And then in 2 to 3 weeks, you're gonna have something that smells fermented. So it's gonna smell like sauerkraut, like a pickle. And it's gonna have white fluffy mold on top. That's good, that's anaerobic mold. That's the good stuff. You don't want green, brown, black, or pink mold. That's aerobic. I put this on too tight. There we go. So this one has been sitting for 3 weeks as of yesterday. It's compacted down a bunch. It's got the white fluffy mold. It smells very strong of vinegar, not rotting food. I don't mind it. I'm gonna add this the next time I flip the hot compost pile, and the pile will heat up, and it allows me to be zero food waste. Nothing's going to the landfill, not even the stuff I used to be nervous to compost. Okay, but also Holly, I have a lot of information like saved on Instagram in my story highlights, in an entire guide. I think I have a blog post about it. I've got so much information on Bokashi. I'll be happy to try and send you some, but I think the TikTok direct messaging doesn't really allow you to send stuff very easily. Well, thanks. I'll check from time to time. I grew up gardening, so it's always interesting. Hey, Harris Daniel, 1776. Holly Graves doesn't have Instagram. Okay, I will send you my website. I'm pretty sure I have a blog post on there. Does TikTok allow you to save content in like groups like Instagram does? Like, can you have a whole like section that people can click on? It's all about Bokashi. I don't know. I need to learn more about TikTok. Bokashi, Bokashi. Don't Google Bokashi. Don't do it. Bokashi. Trust me. Mrs. K wants me to talk a little bit about the compost pile behind me. I mean, I'm happy to. I could talk all day. Do you have specific questions? This is a pile that was started on June 6th. It is just started cooling down. It's 130 right now. It's been sitting at 140 for several days. I'm going to flip it into the empty bin to get it heated back up. That process will add air. I can check it for water when I'm flipping it and add water as I go if it's needed. And I'll add this Bokashi bucket that just finished, and it should heat back up over 130. And it should be done in, I don't know, like a couple months, and then I'll let it sit and cure for another 1 or 2 months. Okay, so this pile was started on June 6th. There's no hard and fast, like if you start your pile on this day and you flip it this many times, it will be ready by this day. Every pile is different, but I will guesstimate that if I started it on June 6th, I'll be spreading it for my fall garden, like when I'm planting out in October. So I will likely be planting things in late September, early October, and this will be ready for me to spread a top dressing layer in all my raised beds. Yeah, Brian just pinned the comment. You want Bokashi, not Bukaki. Let's see. Dino says, I have seen other streamers save parts of their lives and post it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could take clips from it and post them as TikToks, but I don't think I can post the whole thing. So, ooh, Dino, thank you for that. How do you get oak leaves to break down faster? You know, oak leaves are annoying. They take forever. Yeah. I don't typically add a lot of oak leaves to my compost pile. So I have a 3-in-1 leaf blower, shredder, vacuum, and I use that to shred leaves when if I add those to my compost, but I typically just do wood chips in my compost, and I take the shredded leaves and use it as mulch in my garden over winter. You can do series on TikTok. Okay. All right, Brian, I'll have to figure that out. I feel like I need to sit down and do my TikTok homework or hire someone who knows how to use TikTok to be my TikTok person. I wonder if there's someone in Charlotte. I'm in Charlotte. I wonder if there's someone in Charlotte I could hire to come over and teach me the basic fundamentals of TikTok. Okay, Mrs. K. Oh, the container itself. Okay, Mrs. K, sorry. Well, you got more than you wanted. Shit, my water. Okay, let me show you guys. Okay, in my TikTok profile, I have a link to a link tree that should take you to my YouTube channel. And I have the entire video of how husband and I built this compost structure. It's 3 bays, and the fronts come on and off to make it easy to get the compost out. And the sides are removable, which makes it easier to flip a pile into the next bin, okay? You can see the slats on the back. They have gaps for airflow. The fronts do not have gaps for airflow, but the sides, I've included little spacers. Okay, so I added little spacers to these sides that come in and out so that there is more airflow, because I just want as much airflow as possible, because air is one of the four most a key ingredient, one of the four ingredients for compost: water, carbon, nitrogen, and air. So the microbes, if you think, they're like us. They need water and air to live, and they need a food source, which is their nitrogen. Okay, and then the sides are also removable, but we don't ever need to. And they are slatted like this for maximum airflow, but so that the compost does not fall out. And the way we did, let's see if I can show you. The YouTube video shows all of this. Also has a material list, a cut list, how much we spent, everything. All right. And so what we did here is we just took, I guess these are 2x6s and a 2x4. And then these are like 2x2s. So the interior slats fall through here. And then we've got these grooves for the front slats to go right there. I think we just used decking. No, those are 2x6s. And then the bottom, we've got 2x6s as the base. It's working super awesome. Some of the boards are, as expected, getting a little warped. Actually, really only one. One's gotten pretty warped. I can still get it in and out, but eventually we'll probably just replace it. But you just cut one board to size to replace it. It's not a big deal. Oh, let me just say this. It is pressure treated wood, which some people have an issue with. I will say that I've done my research. There is, the wood you can buy at Lowe's does not have arsenic in it anymore. And I'm fine with what it does have in it and my choice to use it. But if you're worried about it, don't use it. Dino, oh, you just asked, is it rot resistant? It is treated wood. It is treated wood. Lisa wants to know how you get leaves to break down faster. Shred them first, for sure. Yeah, leaves that are not shredded, you can add them, but what's gonna happen is those leaves that are not shredded, they're gonna mat together and your airflow is going to be way diminished and it's just gonna take a whole lot longer for them to break down. Mrs. K, you are so welcome. All right, guys. Brian, did I answer all the questions? Hopefully so. I just love talking compost so much. I am going to work on, like Brian said, I guess I can create a series. I'm going to try and do a series on Bokashi, a series on just like the hot composting, just so you guys have access to that information. And my biggest piece of advice is just start, like just build a pile. You don't need a structure. Like you don't need Bokashi. Build a pile, add in your browns, like your leaves, your cardboard, your wood chips, add some greens, your garden refuse, grass clippings, kitchen scraps. Just start. We'll figure it out. It's a natural process and it wants to happen on its own. Brian writes, do we need to have a Tossing Salad podcast episode differentiating between Bokashi versus Bokashi? No, Brian, we do not. Can you even imagine? No. Do you know, let's see, I got mine. Mine is a Black & Decker 3-in-1. It's not very expensive, but it's also not awesome. Like, sometimes I do I mulch the leaves twice in it. It has a bag that attaches to it that collects the leaves. And so sometimes I'll dump the leaves back out in a pile and then suck them up and shred them again. Because it's an inexpensive one, so it doesn't do the best job. It's linked in my Amazon storefront, which is linked in my TikTok profile. But I'm pretty sure it's Black & Decker 3-in-1. I think you can get it on Amazon or order directly from their website. I think Brian has a really nice leaf shredder, maybe. I don't know. But mine is like, it's okay. It gets the job done on a small scale. Oh, Holly, mine has seeds too. I have dahlias, potatoes, peppers, pumpkins growing out of my compost pile. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't bother me. And when I spread my compost, stuff pops up. I either decide to be like, all right, let's let this rogue plant go and see what it does, or I just, pull them out. Brian, I did good. Thank you. I feel like Brian is my TikTok mentor. All right, it's getting really hot. Like even the ponytail braids are starting to like stick to the skin, and I'm pretty sure I accidentally got compost in my cup, but I'm really thirsty. Mrs. K, did you get a pumpkin on that pumpkin vine that was growing out of your compost? That would be so cool. I always have rogue mystery volunteer pumpkins in my garden because the squirrels, you know, take the seeds and bury them wherever. And, you know, we get all these like fun pumpkins at Halloween, and I just put them around the yard to like decompose and feed the wildlife. And the squirrels love to bury them. And so right now I think I have 2 volunteer pumpkin plants going. Okay. On that note, you guys, feel free to send me any direct message, questions that you have. I am happy to talk composting anytime. All right. See you guys later.